Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program with myself, Martin Blackham, and with my wife, Natalie Blackham. Great to have you with us. We're the program that looks at Israel, look at the news, we have interviews, and we're starting today with the newspaper review, and this is the Jerusalem Post. I'm going to try and get that on the camera. It says, tense quiet in the north after brief Hezbollah-IDF clash. No casualties or injuries were reported in an attack against an Israeli army position near Aviv Im. Several anti-tank missiles were fired by Hezbollah terrorists towards an Israeli army base and at a military vehicle along the northern border recently, and Israel's military responded by firing over 100 artillery shells into southern Lebanon, as well as launching an airstrike against the cell responsible for the attack. And you can see, I've just got the image here. We have Israel and Lebanon. Now, this is Avivim, where the attack took place, and this is where Israel struck the terrorists in Lebanon. And it was also covered in Haaretz newspaper. Haaretz has got Hezbollah missiles hit IDF base, destroy army jeep, no casualties. Several anti-tank missiles were fired from Lebanon recently at an Israeli army base and military vehicle in Israel's north. The Israeli army, according to the Israeli army, the incident, which came after a week of growing tension between Israel and Hezbollah. So the Jerusalem Post reported on a subterfuge maneuver. The IDF, the Israeli army, reportedly executed an operation that may be unparalleled, evacuating seemingly wounded soldiers to a hospital, except the soldiers were in fine health, shortly after the exchange of fire with Hezbollah terrorists yesterday. An IDF helicopter evacuated soldiers from the northern border to Ramban Medical Center in Haifa, despite the fact that the soldiers were uninjured. The IDF wanted to distract the Hezbollah terrorists while it was carrying out the operation, and something we've never come across before, this subterfuge operation. It's the first time, yeah. So absolutely amazing that that the Israeli army are using this tactic.
They are learning the trick that some others are doing, because sometimes they put people in ambulances and say they have trouble, and now the IDF is tricking the people too, using that. So it's like they think that something is happening. Meanwhile, the IDF can do
right. And it was reported actually. It wasn't a press release, but it was kind of reported on social media that there'd been Israeli army injuries when there weren't. Mm-hmm. And some people did report it, and then some people said it's fake news, and so there was a bit of confusion about the whole thing. But it's very interesting. We normally talk about the southern border of Israel, where the Gaza terrorists are firing rockets into Israel, but it's very interesting that it's moved recently, the issues moved to the northern border. And continuing to talk about the northern border, it's got in the Jerusalem Post again, we're looking at it, it says, IDF reveals Iranian officers from Iran behind Hezbollah's clandestine missile project. Israel has released information on senior Iranian officers involved in terrorist groups' precision missile project, which has been accelerated over the past year in Lebanon. And Prime Minister Netanyahu said, we're determined to destroy this very dangerous project. Israel exposed information about the project to build these weapons to underscore the point that the Jewish state has no intention of sitting idly by while its enemies stockpile dangerous arms that can be used against it. This is the explosives are in the front of the missile, and then the engine is at the back, and then it has a stabilizer in the rear. And they've been these are the missiles that have been built apparently by Hezbollah terrorists.
Mm-hmm. But who comes from Iran?
From Iran.
Yeah. So it's really what's happening is like Hezbollah, Lebanon and Syria are really becoming proxy of Iran. And Netanyahu doesn't stop speaking about that. He knows that is very important. He's just going right now, today I think he's just leaving for the UK and going to speak to the UK, which doesn't happen so often. So we know that there is a lot of things happening behind the scene. And
it's very interesting because Netanyahu was yesterday, as we've come into the studio, at Hebron for the first time, speaking at a memorial for the massacre of Jews by Arabs at Hebron. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took part in the state ceremony at Hebron Wednesday, marking 90 years since the riots of 1929 in which 69 Jews were murdered. Netanyahu said at the event, "We came to express victory. We returned to our source, and that is our victory." Bloodthirsty rioters carried out the horrific massacres 90 years ago. They were sure they were uprooting us from this place. Once and for all, they were wrong. Netanyahu addressed the strengthening of settlement in the city of Hebron, saying the Machpelah house was populated last week, and we are addressing other issues, important issues regarding the access to the cave of the patriarchs, the cave of Machpelah, and the rights to Jewish property. We do not wish to dispossess anyone, but no one will dispossess us. We are not foreigners in Hebron and will remain in it forever. So he's making history, Natalie, and coming back to...
we need to give a bit of background. This massacre was in 1929, which was 77 people were murdered, and there was some people who were hurt. This was during the British Mandate, and the British didn't do anything during that day. And it was, like the Arabs were going from one house to another house and really killing people, mutilating them. It was just terrible. Hebron is a very tiny Jewish community, and you have is the biggest Palestinian city. And there is a lot of clash over there, but we have to remember that Hebron was the first place where David came to reign for 7 years and 6 months, because he was from the kingdom of Judah. And then he went to Jerusalem, and it was for the kingdom of Israel. So again, for Netanyahu to go there just before the election is really speaking very loud to the people of Israel, saying, okay, this is very important. This is like Martin speak about the Machpelah. The cave of Machpelah is where Abraham, Isaac, Jacob are buried with their wives. And again, when you go over there, it means that their bones are there. So it's like all the history, the beginning of the history of the Jewish people is there in Hebron. Now, it's like knowing your roots, then Jerusalem is very important. But Hebron is very important. So for Netanyahu to go there, this is very historical.
Yeah.
And I think he was speaking there. So no prime minister has done that before this time. So he's really bringing a clear message to his own people.
And what you need to know at home is that Hebron, which is very often referred to by the media as the West Bank, Hebron is really the center of the Jewish people, because this is, as Natalie was saying, this is where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried. This is where King David started
that's what I said.
the rule.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this is really a Jewish city.
And this is the first place where, really the very, very first place that Abraham bought. He bought this cave of Machpelah and the field because he was going to bury his wife, Sarah. And so it was the first purchase. And if you go over there in Hebron, you can see the place where they find archaeological places where, it's always in the gate that usually purchases are made, and you can see the things there. So it's very historical. There is really things that happening in Israel that is very important. And when you say that, it's like, I have a little surprise for you. I mean, surprise, not really surprise, but it's something that was in my heart. And let me know, what can you see in that, Martin? Can you see what is there?
No.
Where? Okay, can you see there? What is that?
Something broken?
Yes, a glass broken. And you see, this is what happened to the Jewish people. And just speaking about Hebron is exactly what happened when the people came. They just ransacked the place, they killed them. And like for 2,000 years, the people of Israel had to leave their country. They didn't have the promised land anymore. They went into exile all around the world. We have a lot of people, and us as Christians, we need to see the responsibility that our forefathers has done as Christians, that there was pogrom, that there was the Holocaust, that there was many things, like in France, in my country, sometimes when people had too much, they wanted to do like wedding, and they don't have enough money. They say, "Well, we're going into the community, the Jewish community. We are putting more taxes for them, and all the money I take it, and I can do a nice wedding for my daughter." This is like, typical thing that was made. And I'm going to tell you a story also, because for you also to know a bit of the background why we are doing all this work in Israel. And when we moved house in my old family house in France, I took some cooking book because we know how to cook in France. And one day I find in that cooking book a letter. And I didn't know all the background, but the letter has been written is the same handwriting that the cooking book. So it might be from, it seems to be that is from one of my family, okay? And this was during the time, this letter that I'm going to read in English to you, but obviously it was written in French. It was written in 1894, which was at the time of the Dreyfus Affair. You can know about the Dreyfus Affair. Again, it was like a captain who was in the army, and he was, they said that he was doing treason to France, which was not at all true. Is when Herzl came to listen to the story in France, and he saw the anti-Semitism. There was really a lot of things that were happening at the time. Okay, obviously it was written in French, but I'm translating it. My dear Mr. Drummond, I read La Libre Parole eagerly, so it's the newspaper. I am wholeheartedly with you in the struggle you have against the Jews. As you show so well, all good jobs are for them, the Jews. The big lands gradually passing in their hands, and if you do not put order, they will gradually seize all the fortunes of France. You, sir, whose spirit is so fertile, can find a way to prevent such a misfortune. So this was found in one of the cooking books in my family, which is just horrible.
But it shows the anti-Semitism in France.
Yes.
And which is prevalent today. It's anti-Semitism hasn't gone away. A lot of people are saying it's even worse now.
It is, and now as Christians we really need to stand about these things. Now I want to read a passage also, to put with the Bible and see what's happening, because you can sometimes read newspaper and read the Bible, and there is so many things who are connected together. And this is what is said. This is in Isaiah 49, and he said, Adonai has forsaken me, my Lord has forgotten me. And they really felt like that's it, they didn't have the land, they lost everything, they were gone, and they really felt lost. And this is what God said then, just the verse after. Can a woman forget her baby, or disown the child of her womb? Though she might forget, I never could forget you. So God said, no, I know a lot of bad things are happening, but you are with me. And after it's written, see, I have engraved you in the palm of my hands, and your words are ever before me. So you see, when you, again, for the Jewish people, when they have a wedding, they will break a glass too, because they say, we can't forget what we had, and we still don't have it. We're still not back in our country. Now, this is the amazing things. We can see a change, and now, since 1948, Israel has been reborn, which was a total miracle. And you can see, and it's written again another verse just after, swiftly your children are coming. Those who ravage and ruin you will leave you. So you can see like a change, okay? And there is another place, just 2 verses after 19, as for your ruins and desolated places, and your land laid wasted. When they arrived here, there was no trees. They had, they had to work so hard to bring back nourishment in the land, and it was very hard work. You shall soon be crowded with settlers, while destroyers stay far from you. And now there is 7 million Jewish people here in this land. It's a real miracle, and they are still bringing them back. And now this is what, again, Adonai say a bit further in verse 22. He said, I will raise my hand to nations, and lift up my hand sign to people, and they shall bring your sons in their bosom and carry your daughters on their backs. So you see, God say, all of that happened. This is terrible, but now us, if we are not Jewish, God is saying, look, I'm going to use you, and like with all the things that happen, I'm going to turn the things around. And now the Jewish people, it's really touching. It's very touching, you know, guys, because as they cried, now the Spirit of God will make us cry. And to stand with them and say, we are with you. We can see that God never forgot you, like a mother can't forget her child. And like now is our turn to really stand. And it's what we want to say. We are doing this program because it's important for the people to understand what's happening here in Israel. Because we have so many media who are saying the wrong things. And like we want to say, look, this is what's happening. There is so many amazing stories. There is so many amazing people. And like even, you know, like we've done a book in Hebrew because the Hebrew language is also a tool in our hands to really break anti-Semitism. And we need to stand. And Martin and me and the family, we came, you know, this is amazing. It's like 10 years ago we arrived here. It's just in a few days, it will be 10 years ago. And our hearts have been broken. And we are here just to stand with them, with the Jewish people, and say, look now, the nations, look what we can do. God is doing amazing things. There is some organization, Christian organization, but you know what's happening now is like we see Jews and Christians coming together, rebuilding this country, and it's just amazing to see all these things.
And this is where you can get involved at home. You know, this is not something, this is something you can get involved in. I know a lot of you are Israel advocates and are watching the program and are advocating for Israel. You're writing to your government members, you're writing to whoever's in charge, but you can, whoever you are, and you're watching today from home, you can get involved. If you see anti-Semitism or you see something in your newspaper, you see something that's happening in your city, in your town, in your village or in your area, then do write to the authorities, do take action. Sometimes if it's very serious, then you need to involve the police. But if there's anti-Semitism and you see it, then do take a stand for it, because that's what Natalie's saying. It's a time for the Christians to stand with the Jews. A lot of information on the internet, how you can combat anti-Semitism, how you can stand with the Jewish people, how you can make a stand in your country, in your land, for them and take action against what's happening. And as Natalie was saying, you know, Israel is not just thriving, and you know, there's so much construction, new roads, there's new airports, the new train.
Yeah, and I heard, it was very interesting. I heard a good friend of us, Merv Watson, saying, you know, Israel is like the Noah's Ark of this time. And I was like, oh, this is interesting what he was saying. And I read an article, again, of a rabbi who was saying exactly the same, saying, this is a place of heaven, and like it's like the Noah's Ark to rescue people. And it's just amazing when you see the Middle East, what's happening, turmoil and all these things. But when you arrive here, and like we know, we have some people who come, tourists, there is more and more tourists to come. And when they come here, they say like, I can feel this peace. And like you hear in the media, war, war, war. But when the people come in this land, they say, I can feel this shalom, I can feel this peace.
And Israel's doing an amazing job around the world. And Israel has recently sent a firefighting team to Brazil. It says, this is the Times of Israel, it says, Israeli government to immediately dispatch delegation of firefighters from the Israel Fire and Rescue Services who specialize in bush and forest fires and extend urgent assistance to Brazil in combating the devastating fires that have consumed large areas of the country's Amazon rainforest. The delegation will provide assistance and professional know-how to the Brazilian authorities, including the Brazilian government and military and firefighting authorities who are combating the Amazon fires. And it's very interesting because it goes on, the article, to say that Israel's relations with Brazil were greatly strengthened following Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to Brazil. I think he's one of the first maybe the first Prime Minister who's toured so extensively, and he's been going to South America. And we also had the visit of President Bolsonaro, who came over to Israel, and he visited different things in Israel which were important for the nation of Brazil. And the countries are looking for close political and strategic cooperation in various fields, and many agreements have been signed in the field with Brazil in the fields of agriculture, science, health, cyber, and more. And so this is, it's very important for you to know that whilst there are issues for security for the land of Israel, Israel is giving assistance to other nations. Mm-hmm. And this comes on to another point. The Israel First, like Natalie was saying, the program, we're coming up to our 10th anniversary of doing television programs for you from the land of Israel. And we need your support. If you are watching and you're able to support us, then we need your support. You can go to our website, israelfirst.org. There's a lot of information how you can donate. And it's time to take action, We need your support. We need you to support us financially, because to continue the work, to continue doing the television program, to continue having equipment, we need to have financial resources. And this is something you can do. Now, you may say, well, I don't know if I can do something, but you may know somebody who can. So take action. If you're a group who are meeting together about Israel, then maybe as a group you can help us, and do contact us at the email on the website. We will let you know how you can get involved. Now, as we're coming into the studio, and this is obviously, you might see this at another date, but it's back to school in Israel. We talk about some of the security issues and other issues, but there are over nearly 2.5 million, unbelievable, students in kindergartens, elementary schools, middle schools and high schools began the new school year across the land this month. The students were welcomed by 200,000 teaching staff and a new education minister, who declared this school year to be marked by mutual responsibility and a strengthening of values. Minister of Education, Rabbi Rafi Peretz, said, in this age, the challenges are large and complex, so our work does not conclude at the end of the school day. The role of the system in accompanying the student and shaping his character even outside the school building is crucial. We want to design a moral, human, loving society here, and a society that values mutual responsibility. And therefore, the central theme I chose for this year is mutual responsibility, and that's just.
It's beautiful.
That's just kind of as we're finishing. There's one story I wanted just to push in, which is I don't know if it's that funny. It certainly wasn't funny for the people who are involved, but this is the Haaretz, and you can see on here people at Ben Gurion airport who were struggling with their luggage because they had a problem with their luggage system. It just goes to show how many people are coming to visit, but they sorted it out, I think, in one day, which is not bad. Or less than a day, maybe half a day. I think everything was sorted out.
Very good.
But normally, let us say that doesn't happen, and everything runs very smoothly. Do come to visit Israel. It's really a trip of a lifetime. So if you'd like to help us, then do get in touch. And we'll be right back after this.
Shalom, dear friends. We carry on the topic of redemption, which is in Hebrew Geula. Do you remember there is an Aleph in the middle of Geula, of the name, and it's like God is there in the middle. How do we know that we are in redemption? Because we can see Israel, who's been reestablished in 1948, is reborn as a state, and this is a big sign that we can see that redemption is there, and it's a process. When you look in the very first big Aliyah, so Aliyah means immigration, it was in 1882, and so at the end of the 19th century, and if you remember, Eliezer ben Yehuda came in 1881, so just really right at the beginning. So there is a passage in the Bible who really speak exactly about that, and it is in Deuteronomy 30 verse 5. is like, and Hashem, your God, will bring you to the land that your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. So we are saying it in Hebrew slowly. Is Vehi viyacha Adonai Elohecha el haaretz, so in the land, asher yarshu avoterai, that your forefathers possessed, and now veyirishta, that you will possess. So you can see they had it is the past, and then you will have it the future. And now we can see this process that's happening. Now you see in 1948 there was only, it was under 1 million, it was 800,000 people coming here of Jewish population, okay, very, very small. And now that we're in 2018, there is 6.6 million of Jewish people. When you look for the future, is written that it will be in 2024, it will be 10 million. And when you look even forward, to 2048, it will be 15 million. So it will be like from under 1 million going to 15 million. And you read it in Deuteronomy 35 is written that he will make you more prosperous and more numerous than your fathers, which is exactly what's happening in front of our eyes. So we look at the name Aliyah, which means immigration. We look at the name again Geula, which means redemption. We look at the name Avotecha, which means your father. And we see that name coming a few times, Avotera, your father. So Israel is back in the land, and this is one of the big signs of redemption. Isn't it amazing? We'll carry on speaking about that next week. See you. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on this special Israel First update. Been great to be with the folks and tell you some of the things that are happening in the land and give you the newspaper review. We'd love to receive your emails. You can email us at info@israelfirst.org. Visit the website www.israelfirst.org. And remember, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.